In this lecture, we're going to take a look at creating a custom header image for your website. So it doesn't matter what theme you use or what you're building, putting a new header graphic or a slider image into your website will drastically change a user's first impression of your site. Right now we have this really clean, minimal portfolio site, which is great. But Salient actually supports the use of header images. So again, if I were to click on one of these portfolio pieces, you see that we can have this full screen image at the top. What I'm going to do is go back to the home page. I'm going to click Edit Page. And you can see that if I scroll down here, I have the option to add an image background for the page header. If I click Upload, for right now I'm just going to throw one in here that's already there. I'll hit Select and I'll hit Update. I'll click View Page. And you can see that that drastically changes your first impression of the site. You'll also see that that white logo we made, it automatically changed the logo used because it's now using a transparent navigation menu. All right, so what I want to show you is how I would go about designing a header graphic for my website in Photoshop. Usually what I do is I would go over to Pexels, Pexels.com, and just search for any kind of image, or probably take my own with my own camera. But in this case, you could search in here and find all kinds of great images. So let's pretend like this was an image of my own desk that I took. I could click Free Download, and it would download it into a new tab. I'll right click and I'll click on Copy Image. Or you could just hit Save Image As and put it someplace safe, like on your desktop or in a folder you're working from. I'll go ahead and copy this image. I'll jump into Photoshop, and I'm going to make a new document. Go to File, New. And this is something that I want to point out. It really depends on the theme you're using and what your end goal is and who's going to be using your website. But typically what I do, I make the width of my images about 2,000 pixels wide, and the height, it changes frequently, but let's just put it at 500 pixels for right now. I'll hit Create, and you can see that this is more of a slivered graphic. In Salient, I have the option, let's jump back over there real quick. We'll click on Edit Page. When I scroll down, I have the option to make this a parallax header, and I can also make it a full screen height. So if you're going to do that, you're going to need a much bigger image. So looking at the page header image for this site, it suggests 1600 to 2000 pixels wide and a minimum height of 475. If I click full screen height, and let's go ahead and preview what that would look like, you can see that I'm going to need a much larger image for that to work. So this just depends on how you want to work and what you're going to do. All right, let's jump back into Photoshop, and let's say I wanted to make this bigger. I can hit Command, Option, and the letter C, which opens up my canvas size. And I can change my height. Instead of being 500, maybe let's make it 700 pixels tall, and I'll click OK. Now what I can do is either hit Command V to paste that image I have in here, and the reason why it was still on my clipboard, it was because I had right-clicked on that Pexels file, and I clicked Copy Image, or you could open it up from where you saved it on your desktop. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm going to hit Command T on this layer that we just brought in, and scale my image down to fit. Now, this is okay, but if I were to throw this up there, it would actually be kind of a distracting backdrop. So what we're going to do, there's a few ways we can work. I'm going to create a new layer above it, and let's just say that I wanted to work with maybe this green color over here from my library. I select that and fill my foreground color. I'll hit Alt-Delete to fill the front. And now what I'm going to do is just cycle through some different blend modes to see what I like the best. So make sure you have this layer selected. Hit the letter V to get your selection tool. And now I'm just going to hit the Shift key and the plus sign, and what that's going to do is it's going to cycle through all of these blend modes down here. So I'll just hit Shift plus just to kind of cycle through and see what I like. You know what, I didn't mean for this red, but that's actually kind of a cool color. I could leave it that way. But let's just toggle through here. So you can see how having the green on top interacts with the layer below, but that might not be enough for you. So what you might consider doing is setting it back to normal, and let's drag this layer down below. I'll select this image layer and I'll hit Command J to jump cut it so I have a version of it if I don't like what I do. Basically just cloning it. I'm going to click back on this layer, and now I'm going to hit Command Shift and the letter U, which desaturates my image. That should be up on here. Let's see, image. adjustments, down to desaturate. So that's where I got that shortcut from. All right, now what we're going to do is change the blend mode of the image layer. And I happen to know that multiply is probably going to give us the best option, so I'll click on that. And you can see that we get a nice header image, but it's going to be dark enough that it won't overpower everything else on the website. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and export this. So I'll come up here to File, and go down to Export. And this time, instead of choosing a PNG, I'm going to go Export As. The reason why is this is such a big image, I want more controls over the type of file I export, so that way I can really crunch the file size down so it doesn't take a long time to load on the website. I'll click Export As. And you can see right now, if I didn't touch anything, this file is going to be 660 kilobytes. And you might not have any reference for how big that is, but that's pretty big. I would tend to stay under 300 kilobytes, if at all possible, when I make my websites. Typically, when I export this quality, I'll set it to 70% or maybe even less than that. Let's see what that does for our file size. So that makes it about 198 kilobytes, which is okay. It's something where you kind of need to pay attention to what browser speed your target market's probably using and what else you have on your website, because you don't want people to have to wait for graphics to load. So if I zoom in on this, you can see that compressing it down actually doesn't really hurt this image at all. I can't really tell that it's been compressed. So maybe I can go even further than that. Let's try 50% and see what happens. And at that point, it still looks pretty good, and our file size is only 107 kilobytes. So I'm happy with that. I'll go ahead and click Export All. We'll just call this header. I'll throw it on my desktop and hit export. And this is something where you can still pull up that tiny PNG website that I showed you in the previous lecture, and you can compress your header image down even further. And I'd highly recommend you do that, because even though Photoshop does a really good job of compressing the image, you want it to be as slim and as small of a file size as possible. So I'm going to drag that image from my desktop up into this little drop zone, and TinyPNG is going to compress it. And you know what, we didn't get that much, but it's still 8 kilobytes saved. So I'll go ahead and hit download right here. It'll throw it into my download stack. And now let's jump back over into our website. I'll click on Edit Page. I'll scroll down to the bottom. We'll go to Image Background. And I'll click on the Remove Upload button right here down below that image, and we'll click Upload to upload another image, which is the one that we just created. And again, don't forget to add alt text or description text if you have something to add for your site. Just again, trying to help your site get found by Google or other search engines. And then another option we can do is click this Parallax Header option. Again, this is in Salient, but what it's going to do is add a really cool depth effect as you scroll. So let's go ahead and save that and view what that looks like now. So now we have that image full size, and as I scroll, you see it's got the parallax effect where the background is moving at a different speed than the foreground and other page elements. It's pretty cool. And that's pretty much it as far as the header image. Of course, if you have more design skills, you could add a lot more elements to this. You could do things such as, I'm just going to add a new layer, get my gradient tool over here, click and drag, and maybe make that a multiply. So it kind of gives a little burned edge here. We could do a lot more. We could add text, we could add more images, and go crazy with it. But for right now, all we're trying to achieve is just a subtle design element that kind of helps build our brand and build the story behind the website. And that's pretty much it. I know this is pretty simple stuff, especially if you're already a graphic designer. You should know how to create your own graphics, but I hope this helps you find simple ways to add some more visual interest to your designs. And no matter what theme you're using, whether it's the default 2017 currently on WordPress or even any other website platform out there, almost all of them give you an option to add a header graphic. And if you're on WordPress and you're using a different theme and maybe it doesn't have the option for a header graphic like this, don't forget you can add the Slider Revolution plugin as well and add a lot more functionality to create those awesome graphics for your site.